Hey, everybody, welcome to Black Lotus, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And today we're going to be talking about Men in Black. And I know the title of this one is The Real Men in Black with an Experiencer. Unfortunately, he has yet to show up. He may show up a little later. I don't know. But, as Ralph was saying, maybe the Men in Black got him. We don't know. But anyway, my name is Damian Gray. I'm here with my co-host, Ralph Torlucci. And let's say hi to the other guys.
Where's all the guys? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There we go.
We got Michael Roser from DarkHour Paranormal, and we have our resident scientist, Wild Trees. How you guys doing?
Fantastic, man. Thank you much. How about yourself,
Yeah, I'm
guys?
doing great.
Great.
Good.
How's the weather where you guys are?
I just gotta tell you guys. This is really funny, but right now I can hear everything you're saying, but it sounds like I'm like ether or something. Like you guys sound so slow and like drawn out. I mean, I can still make out everything, but it's like I'm on drugs, so we'll just go with it.
Your connection doesn't.
Yeah,
sound
your
great.
your connection doesn't sound all that great today. I'm not sure why. I wonder if
Check
it's
your
your Wi-Fi.
Check your headphones. Check your headphone jack. Pull it in and out. Wiggle it. Anything physical you can, pull around because you're really. There's a lot of static and it's not lag. It's like there's a raw connection somewhere with your audio.
Maybe I'll log in. I'll log out and log back in a couple seconds. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
I'll be back in a few minutes. You guys
Okay.
get started without me.
All right. What was the question?
I was just wondering how your weather is actually.
Oh, the weather. It's been incredibly windy the past few days, actually. The first day was very nice, unseasonably warm. I think it was just about 60 degrees. I had the windows open and the wind was literally whipping through my room. It was so nice. The next day was a little bit colder, so I only had the window open for about half the time. And then today it was so windy and cold that I didn't even bother whatsoever. So it's been a mixed bag over here. How about you guys?
Well, today is my birthday, and a couple of fun facts about my birthday. First of all, Albert Einstein was born on my birthday, which explains the genius. But also, no matter I've lived in a great many places, and no matter where I live, it could be really crappy weather up until, but on March 14th, my birthday, it's absolutely beautiful. And this has been the case my entire life. Even when I lived in Minnesota, where we would get snow through March and it would be crappy. And then suddenly on my birthday, it's beautiful out, and then, 2 weeks later, we get 3 feet of snow dumped on us. But yeah.
Up to that point where you said that there was snow still in the future, you had me sold. I was wondering if I could be your neighbor, but at this point, I don't think the move is worth it.
Well, yeah, that was in Minnesota. We're in Vegas now, and I mean, we've had awful weather the past 3 or 4 days, and then suddenly today it's 65 degrees and blue skies, beautiful out.
It was drizzly and rainy and cold.
And also, speaking of my birthday, I want to say thank you to my daughter and son-in-law. They got me this T-shirt. I don't know if you can see it, but it says "Undefeated Hide and Seek Champion." Yeah, I thought that was pretty
awesome.
cool.
Well, Wild Trees has disappeared.
Yeah, well, he said he wanted to log off and log back on. So, but yeah, his audio was pretty bad. But anyway, so yeah, I think we can still carry the show. Like I said, unfortunately, the guy I had slated for to be here on the show as a guest, the Experiencer, kind of bagged out on us at the last minute. And so, but I think we can carry the show without him,
I think we'll make do.
So what do you know about the Men in Black, man?
Well, I know this has been a phenomenon that was reported within the last century to be something of notice. Prior to that, I'm not really sure or whether there was a place for that sort of theory. But that being said, as we know the Men in Black, these imposing figures that are, usually dressed in a black suit, black cat, sunglasses some of the time, sharing similar characteristics in terms of physicality with the paleness of the skin. Sometimes their lips are very thin. They almost look sort of extraterrestrial in some sort of way, not necessarily as an alien, first off, but something seems odd about these individuals. And actually, oddly enough, similar to the black-eyed children, people talk about a feeling of uneasiness or dread when they're around these particular individuals. Now, perhaps that's because there are reports of these guys following and infiltrating people's properties. That might lend to some of the anxiety. But, that being said, the figures themselves are pretty ominous, in terms of what we know about the reports. And of course, if they show up in your life, they're there to probably truncate some sort of expression that you might be able to have, or, to completely silence you or whisk you away. I mean, these are all viable thoughts about the men in black and what they're capable of doing. Now, again, where they come from, well, not again, but where they come from, that's up for debate, because through a lot of research that people have done, I don't think that these are necessarily superficial governmental officials. I think that there's something behind the scenes. I think there's a bigger, perhaps people call it the shadow government, that these guys are a part of. Or just to kind of throw it out there, because a lot of the technology that is out and very secret and high technology is privatized by these different companies and protected as much. So perhaps there's a whole faction within their program that goes out and, snuffs people's expression about certain things that they've seen or what they know.
Yeah. By the way, Wild Trees is back with us again. Okay, great. Thanks. You were saying that it's a relatively new phenomenon, but I've heard stories going back to the days of like Roswell, where these things, I call them things because I'm not sure that they're human, show up and, like you were saying, intimidate people into their silence, and basically tell them, there's a lot of holes in the desert. So if you keep talking,
Well, I mentioned that within the last century, I think it prior to like the 1950s or even maybe the 1940s, because, these sort of times are very nebulous when it comes to this type of information. Maybe there was something prior to, but these things don't seem to be preternatural or supernatural in any way. They seem to be involved on a very physical level. So for them to pop up around an instance like that would make perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Where are you at on this, Wild?
Yeah, I think, let me see. I think there's multiple explanations for Men in Black, and I think there's three that I could think of now. One is just like they're normal humans, possibly just a bunch of dork losers who impersonate some kind of person of authority. Because I could see myself doing this. Like I hear about some cool UFO event, and I just put on a suit. I'm just a normal guy. I go to the witness and I pretend I have some kind of authority just to get information. I think that's happened a few times. So I think these are one explanation is just normal people impersonating someone of authority to get more information. I do think some of them are associated with government agencies.
Yeah, that's what I think so too.
And then the third one, the spiciest one, I do think there are some non-human shenanigans going on. And just like DarkHour was saying, some of these accounts, especially from John Keel had a lot of these run-ins or first-hand accounts he collected in the Mothman prophecies in West Virginia. Yeah, a lot of them don't seem to understand what it is to be human. They seem to have a hard time passing as a human. Weird skin tones, weird ways of moving.
Eyebrows.
Yeah.
Lack of eyebrows. And they're always associated with like UFO activity, and they always they're threatening at times and stuff like that. So that explanation is kind of weird. I guess I don't know what the intention is. If we just read it at its face value, which is, sometimes it's not the best thing to do with paranormal. A lot of times the face value is meant to throw us off. But if we were just to read those encounters at face value, it seems like they are somehow associated with the UFO incident and they don't want it to get out. They're threatening. They just wanted to stay hush hush. So you would think perhaps they are associated with the UFO, but that's a superficial reading. Who knows what their actual intention is?
Yeah.
I think governmental.
I want to jump in here real quick. I want to say hi to somebody. We've got a person in the chat room, and she is actually my former mother-in-law, but she will always be my mom. Susan, thanks for the birthday wish. I appreciate it, and it's good to see you here. Oh. So, okay. Anyway, Ralph, where are you at?
I think it's government. Whether they're human or not, I don't know. That I go back and forth on. But I think they're definitely the men in black who come in, like you said, Michael was saying, they talk down to you until you do what they're saying.
Yeah. I think I think you're very right. I don't think that they're human. I really don't. And if they are, they're a human hybrid of some sort. But Michael, I think we lost you there. Looks like you're frozen. Can you still hear us?
Men in Black got him.
But
this planet.
as much as we talk about UFOs, and other people do too, and we talk about all things paranormal, I wonder why we haven't been contacted, especially since I came out about my abduction case. But that brings me to another question. Why is it that you don't hear a lot about Men in Black encounters anymore? I mean, you did a lot up until probably that one incident that happened back in Niagara Falls. And that was back in, when was that? It was like back in, remember they had the video surveillance of these guys?
Yeah, I don't remember when that was.
I want to say it was like the early 90s.
I remember that. Yeah, it was in Canada, like a hotel lobby in Canada.
Yeah, near Niagara Falls. Yeah, and the video surveillance, the pictures that I saw were very suspect. I mean, kind of compelling because they were these two tall white men, and their faces were very featureless. And they were dressed like typical Men in Black. But I wonder if one of the reasons that you don't hear much about encounters with them anymore is because of that movie franchise Men in Black with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. And I think people, because they made fun of it.
Yeah.
I think Men in Black weren't so intimidating anymore. I mean, I wonder if that's the reason.
I think, my thoughts are, I had the same thoughts as you did. First of all, at first I was wondering, where have all the Men in Black gone? They should write a song like that. Like, where have all the cowboys gone? Yeah, where have all the Men in Black gone? I think the Men in Black perhaps. Oh, I was going to say DarkHour messaged and he said he had to restart his computer, so he'll be back.
Oh, okay.
But just like the UFO phenomenon, where have all the saucers gone? We don't see saucers anymore. We see like pill-shaped Tylenol, Tic Tac shaped craft. We see balls of light,
triangles, a lot of triangles. So we did an episode called Rise of the Black Triangles, and we had mentioned that you don't hear much about flying saucers anymore. It's all about, like you said, the Tic Tacs and cigar shaped and triangles. But yeah, I don't know why that is, and I've noticed that it seems to go in spurts. So, first you had the flying saucers and that kind of thing. And then you had the boomerang triangles. And then you had the cigar shaped crafts. And Ralph and I have both seen that over our house. And
right.
It was very strange. But you don't see much about flying saucers anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, occasionally.
But you still see UFOs. So I'm thinking maybe the Men in Black have changed the way they look, the way they appear. Although of all the things we've been hearing, I'm not sure what they could be, so that's what I'm thinking. Perhaps they're still around, but they've changed form, but I don't know what that form would be. I haven't heard any weird accounts. There's the black-eyed kids, black-eyed people thing, but they don't really act like the Men in Black do. They're not really, they act very different. So I don't know what they could be.
Yeah.
So that's what I've wondered too. I don't know where they've gone. And the other thing about you mentioned, what about us? You're very public about paranormal. I'm very public about paranormal. I kind of feel like right at this point in my life, I want something paranormal to happen to me again. I want to have a heavy paranormal experience because I prepared my mind for it. Like I said, my next paranormal experience, I'm going to be very positive, open. I'm not going to let the fear take over me. I want to experiment. And I feel like sometimes that kind of attitude actually repels the paranormal, if you have a real heavy willingness to engage with it. Because a lot of times the paranormal, it kind of relies on the element of surprise. You know, it wants to surprise you, catch you off guard. So if you're someone who's like ready for it, well, then they lose the element of surprise. You know.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's why, you know, because like if Men in Black were to encounter any of us, we automatically, I think, would be like, oh my God, it's the Men in Black. We'd be like, can I have an autograph? You know, we'd be asking all these weird questions.
Where's your flashy thing?
Yeah, can you flash me? And so I think that's why they wouldn't want to encounter. They'd be like, these guys, they're going to make fun of us, or it's not going to work with them. You know,
Right.
Perhaps that's why.
But you know, I mean, like with UFOs, you know, I say this all the time. People tell me all the time that they want to see a UFO, and I'm like, well, first of all, be careful what you ask for, you know, and especially the people say they want to be abducted, and it's like, oh, I don't know if you really do, but if you want to see a UFO, come live in Vegas and look up, because you're bound to see something that you cannot identify. I'm not saying that they're aliens. It's very likely that they could be military aircraft that has, you know, is just super secret, and they're test flying it, you know. But you know, living as close as we do to Nellis Air Force Base and of course Area 51 and S4, you know, I mean, you see stuff in the sky that you can't explain. I mean, and what we've seen, they are not drones. They are not some common thing like a helicopter. We live in between two major airports in East Las Vegas, and so we know what planes and helicopters look like. In fact, we have that Maverick helicopter tour that comes out of Vegas and goes to the Grand Canyon for a tourism thing. We've got that flying over our house all the time. We've even got Janet Airlines flying over our house at least, I say 8 times a day, going out to Area 51 and Nellis. So we know what typical air vehicles look like, but the things we've seen, we just cannot explain. You know, I mean, they're just.
But the Men in Black have not yet come for us.
Nope. And in fact, that cigar-shaped one that we saw that went over our house happened broad daylight. So, I mean, normally what you want to do is you want to get away from the city lights of the strip and all that. And just like I said, look up, you're bound to see something, you know, at probably 3 times out of 10, you know. So very strange, weird place we live.
Going back to the Men in Black, I don't know if they are a lot of them or they're just real stealthy, because, I mean, with all the hidden cameras in hotel rooms and houses and stuff like this, nobody else has gotten any pictures of them. You don't see very much about that.
Yeah. I mean, they do have some photos out there, but they're few and far between. They really are.
I think
but
a lot of times.
Yep.
I think a lot of times these guys are not necessarily showing up in the most populated areas. A lot of the stories that we hear are from home approaches, where they get a knock on the door, or they arrive home from work and these guys are in the front of the house standing outside of the car. Just to mention, is it possible that there are different tiers of what we might call Men in Black, wherein, let's say, the first tier are government workers, and you know, they know as much as they know, and they're assigned to certain things, and they'll come and visit you as needed. Second tier, same idea, but just deeper into this secretiveness and perhaps knowledge about what they've been debriefed on, and then they're going to come for you. And then perhaps as you go up these tiers and it goes higher into these governmental ladders, maybe at the very top, there is something that's more non-human that they do employ at certain points for certain people. It's possible, because we do see, and we have heard many reports of people being approached by what we would consider a man in black, and yet he was a normal person dressed just like a man in black would be.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Interesting. I've never thought about that theory before. That makes a lot of sense, you know.
DarkHour, have you heard of any recent encounters with the Men in Black? We were just talking about that. Like, where have all the Men in Black gone? You know, have you heard of anything?
I hear about it through the grapevine. Actually, I do hear people saying that, you know, they've had recent experiences with this. I have worked with somebody who has reported several visits at different points in time, and one of them being more recent. And these were visits that appeared to be something of not necessarily interrogation, but soft interrogation. And then when they got as far as they got with him not being as cooperative as they'd like, then they threatened him, but indirectly they threatened him. And this has happened a handful of times to this individual. But yeah, I've definitely heard of it. I can't give you the site right off the top of the head here. And there's a reason I'm not saying this individual's name at the moment. But that being said, yeah, definitely. I think we hear more about the Men in Black than we hear about the black-eyed children or black-eyed adults.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
No.
Somebody I was chatting with recently on Facebook had mentioned that she saw Men in Black at her school, but they weren't in black. They were actually in beige, matching beige suits. And so I think that goes back to what Wild Trees was saying about how they may have changed their appearance, but they're still the same beings. Regardless of who they are. But I kind of wonder if they're hybrids, some of them anyway.
I had a question about so this idea of them changing, like I was talking about how UFOs have changed. We don't see flying saucers anymore. Now they're more like the Tic Tac. They're more like spheres. And so I was thinking perhaps the Men in Black have changed a little bit as well. But I wonder this, okay? So let's say we just assume a lot of UFO technology, Men in Black experiences are actually a different form of a different civilization outside of human civilization. My question is, do you think that civilization updates itself the way we do? So, right now we're in the 2020s, but if you go back to the 80s, everything was different. Fashion, lingo, mindset, everything was different. Do you think these advanced technology civilizations also evolve at a similar pace? Meaning that 10 years ago, they acted differently, meaning that 20 years ago, they acted differently. What do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. I would say 100% yes. And if for no other reasons, because the technology that they're working with and developing is changing as well. So as we know very, very intimately, technology changes the lives of everyone. And if you have something like that and you're right on the cutting edge, I wouldn't doubt for a second that they're, upping their ante in respect to updates and so forth. And that goes along the same lines as approach too. So when you're talking about physical garb and stuff like that, yes, because it's a different world and I'm sure that they're savvy to that.
Well, here's my question about that. Basically, why? Why are they doing this? I mean, I'm of the belief that there are many different species of aliens visiting us. So why this one set of people or whatever they are? Why have they been tasked to do this? To go out and intimidate experiencers?
Well, I mean, if something is going to be kept secret and you have to have some sort of guerrilla force to go out and enforce this, the same way that a mafia might employ a freelancing thug, you're going to find something like this in the mix. And I think that it's just another branch of whatever sect is trying to keep certain information under wraps, and from those who know it from expressing it at large. Mm-hmm. It's an investment of personal interest, I think, in respect to the whole outfit. And that's why they might employ some strong arms like that.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I like to think of another, I think that could be correct. Another alternative explanation is I like to think about just that they're weirdos, so we know that humans, we know very clearly that there's a subset of humans that are just weirdos and they just act weird. So perhaps there's a subset of UFOs that are just weirdos. They have a very poor understanding of how things work, and they, for whatever reason, think the best thing to do is to intimidate humans, like in this manner. So it doesn't have to make any rational sense. Perhaps I think it's wrong to think that everything a different civilization would do will always make sense and will always be error free. I think it will always be logical. I don't think that's always true. It's definitely not true with humans. So.
Well, this may sound like a silly question, actually, but I'm sure you've seen the movies Men in Black, and mainly they don't show them intimidating anybody. Other than erasing their memory with a little flashy thing. Yep. But their main job, according to those movies, is to keep track of and sort of enforce the Earth law upon aliens that visit us. Now, obviously, this is a work of fiction, but how true do you think that may be, that they are doing just that, that they are monitoring other aliens that are on Earth?
Yeah. That could be so. That doesn't really match up with their aggressive behavior, but the idea that some of them aren't being aggressive, but they're instead monitoring human behavior, I think could be possible. Because it's like once again, if we compare it to humans, humans, sometimes we're altruistic and we have, nonprofit organizations, and all these nonprofit organizations do is they take care of a certain kind of lizard or turtles or something. Even though we're not turtles, we're like, well, let's take care of these turtles. So it could be that some of these civilizations have the purpose of let's monitor Earth for rogue aliens to kind of protect them. So it's possible that could be an alternative explanation for them as well.
But what kind of control could we possibly have over aliens? I mean, I'm of the belief that Eisenhower did in fact he did in fact strike a deal with the aliens for abduction purposes and in trade for technology. But I don't think that we would have, with the limited amount of power that we have, that we would have any control over aliens.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Damien. I think most of the civilizations that have made their way here or have been here inside the Earth for many years, they have technology in ways that if they wanted to eradicate an entire planet, they could do that very easily.
Right.
And insofar of as my research goes, that's pretty much the message that I've received. And there are various reasons that certain species aren't doing that, of course, that you could go into. But by and large, I think what you see in Men in Black is really these characters are a culmination of different roles that possibly actually exist within our organizations, wherein you have some faction that might monitor extraterrestrial activity insofar as they're able to do it. And maybe it's so that there's a facade there wherein the extraterrestrials allow us to do that to a certain degree to give us the perception that we have control to whatever point. So, I mean, there's different ways to look at it, I think, in the end. But, honestly, I think that if extraterrestrials wanted to do something at large on a grand scale, they could just do it and we wouldn't even see it coming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't possibly agree with you more. Honestly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, Well,
I mean, who knows? Maybe the foot has stood on the anthill at some point in our history. We keep referring to some cataclysmic event that happened about 12,000 years ago, wherein there is still much ado in terms of theory, according to Brian Forrester, saying that extraterrestrials may have had intervention in this. There may have been some sort of global conflict that really screwed things up and decimated a good population of the planet, and we might be remembering it differently the way that we do. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a person with us last week. Was it last week? And he was mentioning. Excuse me. We were talking about the Anunnaki and how there are tales of how the Anunnaki spread vapor over humans to kind of dumb them down, which makes a lot of sense to me because we're not exactly an intelligent species in the universe. We really aren't. I love when people say that they're looking for other intelligent beings in the universe. And I'm thinking, well, we need to get intelligent first, but yeah.
Well, that saying suits us though.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that I lost track of what I was thinking. Of course. See, it's my birthday. It's an age thing.
I don't even know why you're here. It's your birthday, man. You should be out, eating cake or something. I don't know what you do.
I'm actually going to go get some cake after this for you. So.
My daughter brought over a pie for.
Oh, that works.
Today is Pie Day, So 3/14.
Clever.
Well, speaking about your memory having a little lapse, I was also another thought I had was that. I fully think that these extraterrestrials or others have the capability of, wiping our memory. So I was just thinking perhaps the majority of Men in Black encounters we will never hear about because people don't remember them. Perhaps
that's
it's just
that's entirely possible.
So it's probably just a minority of them that we're hearing about that for whatever reason got slipped through the cracks.
Yeah. They got hit with the flashy thing.
And then the other thing I was what I was mentioning earlier about how the Men in Black may be trying to monitor. I in that instant I was assuming that the Men in Black themselves were aliens, so they would have themselves would have alien technology, so they would be more capable than humans of monitoring activity.
Yeah, entirely possible. Folks, if you're just now joining us, I'd like to apologize again. The gentleman who's going to be on with this, who was an experiencer of Men in Black, evidently he had several experiences. He bowed out at the last minute, and I'm not sure why, but he was very concerned about his anonymity. He asked me if his face had to be shown on this. I said no, and he said, "Can I use a different name?" And I said, "Of course." But I think, situations like this only add and attribute to the fact that these things really do intimidate people and scare them, I think a lot of people are reluctant to talk about it, simply because of that fact.
When somebody threatens your family, I mean, you're one thing, but when they bring the family into the mix, or close friends, something like that, then it just changes the dynamic, and a lot of people step back at that point.
Ralph and I have a mutual. Yeah. Ralph and I have a mutual friend of ours that we've known since we were kids, and evidently her grandfather worked at what is that air base in New Mexico?
Air base.
Where they supposedly took the crashed UFO. Not right, Patterson. Anyway, he worked there, and he witnessed the UFO that they brought, the crashed UFO that they brought there. And he was told, if you ever mention anything about this ever, then you're going to go, and your family's going to go, and your family's going to go before you so you can witness it. Kind of mob intimidation, the kind of thing. So this intimidation happens all the time, and he didn't reveal any of this until he was on his deathbed. And I'm kind of wondering, I think that adds to the validity of the story, because, I mean, why would anybody say something like that on his deathbed? I mean, I've even heard of other people that are high up in the military who, on their deathbed, they're admitting to UFOs and aliens.
It almost seems cliche at this point, but I think that that's very significant, just the way that you're describing it, Damien. I mean, these are your last words on Earth. You can say, "I love you," darling. I love my kids. Instead, he's saying, "Actually, aliens and UFOs are real." That's it. You know what I mean? So you got to choose wisely when you only have a little bit of breath left. And if they're choosing to divulge something like that, it's certainly worth a good, hard, stern look.
Exactly.
Jesus, I can't talk now. Sorry.
Well, this secrecy thing does make a lot of sense with the Men in Black. The fact that they want to keep it secret. I think secrecy is a big thing about UFOs. Like, a lot of people say, I don't believe the government could keep something like this secret. Well, they're missing half of the equation, because it's not just the government; it's the phenomenon itself is trying to keep itself secret. You know what I mean? It's not like, because there's some things the government will want to keep secret, but that's just one group trying to keep it secret. With UFOs, it's like the phenomenon itself is trying to keep it secret, and then another group. So we really have a lot of stacked against us. And
I understand why a government would want to keep it secret, for international superiority for one. They wouldn't want other governments to know about this, that we're freely admitting that they exist, and we've been working with them, and I don't think other governments would. I think it's an advantage for us to keep it secret. I can understand that, but other countries are doing their own UFO investigations, and other governments are doing it. So with that in mind, why don't you guys think, why don't all the governments come together and create some exposure about this? I know that Russia is more than willing to, but I think it's mainly the United States that is putting their foot down about it.
It's that old world logic. wherein there's competition everywhere. And in doing something like that, you make yourself vulnerable. You open yourself up. Maybe that there are security measures that they're trying to protect, that's utilizing some of the meta propulsion technology, that perhaps what we see in the sky is something more neutral. Maybe it's more of a toy for them, or something experimental, wherein again, that technology is being used and weaponized in another place. I don't know. That would be a really interesting concept, and possibly along the lines of a new world order, wherein you have this one world government, which, I think on paper doesn't look like a very bad thing. It, some people might call it some sort of socialism, but I don't even think that it goes that far. In fact, I think that if that was actually something that we could realistically reach towards, we might all benefit. But again, you have to look at those that are in control and behind the scenes and really dissect their agenda. What is it that they're really desiring, and what is the outcome that they're looking for in any action that they do? I'll give you this much: 80% is going to be not for us. So if that's who we have as the people in power, until we change that paradigm, there's not much we can do.
I totally agree. And where it comes to government secrecy, people always want to talk about disclosure and how we're getting closer to disclosure, because the Navy released that leaked footage of the Tic Tac UFO. They're claiming we don't know what it is. It's a vehicle not as of this Earth, and on and on and on. And so people are jumping on that and saying, well, this is obvious that we're getting closer to disclosure. I have to totally disagree that we are. I think they're trickling it out to us, but I don't think there's ever going to come a day when they just
tell us everything.
The president comes out and says, "Yep, they exist. We know them."
I don't know. I think that could happen.
You think so?
I think so. It would be for their benefit, but
I think at some point,
I'm not that optimistic.
I think at some point in the future, I 100% believe everything paranormal will be mundane. I think everybody will know that UFOs are real. Everybody will know that UFOs were real now and in the past. They'll know about ghosts. They'll know about interdimensional travel. I truly believe that'll happen. I don't know when it'll happen. I'm not sure if it'll be in our lifetime. But once again, I think when that happens, there'll be other weird stuff that supersedes the paranormal. What we think is paranormal now will be mundane. There'll be something else that's even weirder. There will always be something at the very edges that we don't understand. But in that aspect, I am positive about humanity. I think we will finally understand what we today consider the paranormal. To answer the question you asked earlier about why can't the governments just get together, well, I think I have one piece of the puzzle, like what needs to happen and why it probably won't happen. Okay, so in the United States, like what we really need is we need to have the academic scientists. There's a lot of academic scientists. These are people that don't work for the government, don't work for a private company. They're just career scientists. They work for research institutions. They're the ones that need to start doing this stuff. But what needs to happen is that, when a scientist like that does their research, they need money, because these projects take like millions of dollars and they take, hundreds of hours. Now, the way they get their money mainly is through a research grant that's offered by the National Science Foundation, which is a tax-supported organization. Now, the problem with these grants is that the National Science Foundation, they stipulate what it's used for. Okay, so if you get the money, you can't do paranormal research. You can only do it for what they say you could do it.
Sure,
what needs to happen in the United States is the National Science Foundation needs to be like, okay, we're opening funds for paranormal research. Because I guarantee you, if an academic researcher has the money and it's coming from a reputable organization, they'll do paranormal research. They will. They'll go in with an attitude of maybe like, well, they're supposed to be like unbiased, but they'll do it because it's money and they want to get paid.
Right.
But right now there's no money. There's nobody's offering the money for it.
Right. Ralph and I we just spoke to somebody yesterday, and he's a theoretical physicist, and he was basically saying the same thing. And he said, especially with theoretical physicists, if you mention something about anti-gravity to them, they just, oh God, and he was telling us that, he's known people that have lost their careers because of this, but I was telling him, why is it that science does this? it seems to me that we're never going to progress any further unless we get the funding for that kind of thing. So most of these theoretical physicists, like that gentleman that we spoke to, they're doing it on their own, and they're being kind of hush hush about it. This guy isn't. He's very open about it because he's not in the field anymore. But and he was talking about Einstein's theory of everything, I think it is, and how he said that most scientists just ignore that stuff. And the reason being probably is because of money. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a big
By the way,
part.
folks, that podcast will be up on Wednesday at Paranormal News Network. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, there's a lot of other factors that sort of need to come into play. I mean, this false narrative, you look at it in terms of disclosure, yes, but then, of course, there's false narratives in the paranormal field as well. The one motif that seems to run through is that of fear, that this is all something that we need to fear. And we've talked about this before in many different ways, but it's still something that we have to revisit because it's still being pitched in that same way. It's interesting, too, when we talk about disclosure, I agree that, as I've mentioned before, this isn't going to be something that any official body comes out and says, hey, we have aliens, we have this high technology, you guys can go about the rest of your day. It's probably going to be bodies of individual groups of people who have had deep interest and have been researching for very long periods of time and getting these leaks and information from people on the inside that bring it to light. And eventually people gravitate until that group is so big that it encompasses more than it doesn't. In the meantime, I'm concerned, for what people think they might see. Look at how many people were in stitches and really believing in the Tim McShillen UFO photo. It was clearly a balloon. We talked about it in many different aspects. It's been debunked, and yet people still believe that footage or photos like that are actual evidence. Now, in my opinion, that doesn't necessarily indicate there was a mistake on McMillan's part. It could be very well disinformation or some sort of misinformation put in there to distract us again from the truth or to further our thought processes and how we're analyzing so many things into a very big loop. And I think that that's something that's definitely there and present intentionally.
Yeah. Real quick, if I can scroll up here. First of all, Valerian the Mac mentioned undefeated, and I'm assuming you meant my shirt. And this shirt was given to me by my daughter today for birthday present. And it says undefeated hide and seek champion. And it has a picture of Bigfoot on it. But the other thing Valerian asked was, what is the gentleman's name? On the podcast, and his name is Frank Fiorentino, and he's kind of he's an author. He's put out a book, but he's been kind of ousted by the theoretical physics community because of his views on this thing. One other thing here is that Magnetic Vortex Renaissance says there are two reasons for a lack of serious disclosure of these subjects. One, our planet's civilization would suffer huge social and economic upheavals. And two, let's get here again. Come on now. Oh, where did it go? Admitting to all the secrets regarding abductions, assassins, and fraudulent technology patents, ongoing above top secret projects, discrediting witnesses and ruining careers, etc. Yeah, Magnetic. I'm on board with what you're saying.
Yeah, me too.
And I used to think, what, we're ready for disclosure. We as a society, we can handle it. I thought that up until about March of last year. And when you couldn't go to the store and get, toilet paper or relatively anything, that's how people just mass panicked about this thing, about the COVID thing.
Imagine if they came out about aliens.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think people would lose their little minds. And I used to be very optimistic about society. I don't know why. I'm kind of a pessimist, but
you know, you know what? It's necessary for us to progress. It's called in science. It's called a paradigm shift.
Mhm.
You know, these paradigm shifts have to happen for us to progress. If not, we're going to, as a society, as a culture, all of humanity, we're going to be stagnant until we make that paradigm shift. And it's going to be painful. But you know, a lot of growth spurts are very painful, but necessary.
That's the way,
so I
yeah.
don't. We can't wait till the perfect time. We just have to do it.
well,
But
and you know how human beings are. And it's in our nature to shun things that we don't understand or are different from each other, from us. And so, you know, I'm reminded of that movie District 9. District 9, is that it?
Yeah.
And, you know, and how they treated the aliens that arrived and as second-class citizens. And I can honestly see that. I can see the majority of human beings just losing their minds over aliens that have been, you know.
Well, you know, like he's saying here, magnetic in one way or another. I mean, it's going to cause a huge upheaval, especially economically, which we can very much expect. But not only does the idea of aliens challenge us on a physical level, it challenges ideologies, which, again, as I've mentioned before, I think that that's something that would be incorporated. The Vatican would be the first to say, oh, well, actually, if you look between the lines and, you know, versus this one, they mentioned something about this and we didn't see it. Sorry. So, you know, I think that they would incorporate, you know, this sort of paradigm shift within the religions, but they would change too. Everything would change. But as Wild Trees is saying, it's inevitable. It's something that happens. It's a natural part of the process. The resistance is what dictates the intensity of that shift, I think. And it's a collective resistance that can be probably measured, you know, at least in retrospect, looking at some of these past shifts that we've gone through.
Yeah.
Now, the second part, I think I agree with also, you know, as far as why the cover-ups are. You know, a lot of times you hear the term, the cover-up is worse than the crime, but I think it's the reverse with this UFO paranormal stuff. I think the crime is much worse than the cover-up. That's why they don't want to give it up. Because, you know, the truth is, if we find out that the truth that the government or a lot of organizations have known about the government presence, they know abductions are real, they know all these shadow people, they know everything's real, and they haven't done anything about it as far as we know. They haven't even warned us about it, then that is a big crime.
Well, I think one of the reasons for that is because they would have to admit that they've been lying all these years. You know, this is not something new to them, you know.
You know, Lloyd Zenner just mentioned something interesting in the chat. He said the Pope couldn't break these eggs to society. Maybe not, but he could have a very large influence on those who follow him and believe in that religion. I think a lot of those people, if not the majority of them, will take what he's saying with less of a grain of salt. So if his influence is as such, and he starts talking about this and it's becoming, you know, common knowledge, I think that he has a very good foot on being able to change things as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just him. It's any major religion and any major leader, really.
That's what I was going to say. It's anybody that people look up to like that. Whatever they say is going to definitely be taken with less than a grain of salt.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Ralph and I were having a conversation with this after we spoke to Frank yesterday, because we don't normally get into religious talk here or at the podcast, but there he brought up the concept of God, and I mentioned that we're not talking about religion. We're talking about a God source, a creator out there. And I think it would definitely take somebody like the Pope to come out and admit that, you know, these things do exist, and that, you know, because I mean, I remember somebody once said that, I think it was a scientist, and he said, the more I study religion, the more I'm convinced that man has never worshipped anything other than himself. And I think that kind of brings religion into a nutshell. But that's not God. You know, I mean, that's not this supreme being out there. And I'm of the opinion that God, once it creates us, I don't think it really gives a damn about us anymore. You know, and it most certainly doesn't care what we call it. I think if it cares about us at all, it it probably hopes that we will put down our blades and stop killing each other over whose God is better, because it's all the same God. The Torah says all gods are as one God, and to insult one man's God is to insult your own. Well, the Torah gets it. Why don't these other religions get this? And really, why can't they see that religions were probably created by aliens themselves, such as the Anunnaki?
At least the original concepts, or they could have been, a list of certain doctrines that are not necessarily promises. They're not anything that's threatening. They're saying, if you live by these particular principles, life will be a whole lot easier for you in the physical world. And maybe that's what they started with, sort of a hint. And then that became a religion, and that became something sacred to people. And then as time has gone on, we know much about the manipulation of certain texts and so forth for certain reasons that all come back to human beings. So
sure. And it's a way to manipulate the masses, into obeying, if it's church sanctified, then it's going to be a law.
Well, it always comes back to some very basic concepts, but these basic concepts are so widespread, such as fear and control and manipulation. It pervades through or permeates through everything, when you really look at it. So it's a matter of eliminating that on certain turfs if you can. And of course, if we're talking on that level, you'd say that it starts with you, because if the world outside of you is a reflection of what's inside of you as well, and we're all in this synergistic reality existing on certain frequencies, well, then there is no separation. The blade of grass is as much of God or God's essence as you and I are, or the extraterrestrial that lives on planet Nibiru. It doesn't matter in the end. A molecule is a molecule, but they'll all have different forms of expression, because that's creation. There's no artist out there who is sitting down and copying somebody's song or painting lick for lick on that paintbrush, nuance for nuance on every single lick, that it sounds exactly the same. You cannot create art that sounds cookie cutter to the very T sonically, let's say. So, that would explain why whatever creator is out there is creating so many different versions of that expression, its own expression, within people, within nature, within the universe itself. And I think that would account for a lot of the differences that we all have, and yet still share similar origin.
Right. Valerian asked,
Valerian.
So Jesus was Anunnaki? No, I don't think that that's what we're saying. And we're certainly not none of us are, downing any religion, regardless of, what or who you worship. But we're just saying that, aliens were probably likely especially the Anunnaki, were probably the origins of modern day religion.
Well, for Christianity,
they just took it out from there. Say again?
For Christianity, it's right there. It's made by an extraterrestrial. The religion was started by extraterrestrial. I'll say it once again. I've said it like 5 times, but like, if you read Genesis, you open your Bible, you go to the first book of the Old Testament, maybe the first paragraph, it says that, God created the earth. Okay. That's all you need to know. Okay. So the definition of an extraterrestrial is you're not from Earth. Okay. If you create the earth, by definition, you are not from the earth. Therefore, you're an extraterrestrial. So what you just said is 100% true. Christianity was started by an extraterrestrial. It is an extraterrestrial religion. You are worshiping an extraterrestrial, which also, weirdly, it means Jesus is a hybrid between a human and an extraterrestrial. Because, and that's what we hear all the time. So I'm not trying, like I said, I'm not disrespecting anybody. I'm just reading what's clearly in the book itself.
Yeah, I think, I don't totally disagree with you about that, but I think that would be really hard for the devout to wrap their minds around, because they've been taught one thing their entire lives, and to say that, God is an extraterrestrial and that Jesus is a hybrid, I think that would be really hard to grasp for some people that are devoutly religious, but
You're right, but what the way he's defining it and the way that he's interpreting it from the book, it's there in black and white, and it's not necessarily the extraterrestrial like a gray. Okay, so
Not great.
it means that whatever created the planet. I mean, you get it. I'm just saying it again.
Yep.
Whatever created the planet was outside of the planet, so therefore, it by definition is extraterrestrial to our planet. What the characteristics of that particular energy are up for debate, but based on the Bible and the way that it's describing. I mean, I love what Wild Trees has said many times before, too.
You were mentioning the Pope earlier, and as I recall, it was maybe about 2 years ago, the Pope came out and said that extraterrestrial life could possibly exist, that we are not necessarily the center of the universe. And I really appreciated that about this Pope, that he did that, because I think that showed some balls that no other Pope has ever shown.
Might be a primer.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people said exactly that. They're getting ready.
Oh, they would address. I figured they would address certain groups, or if certain groups got the information, or knew that something was coming, they would talk to their specific groups, whether they're religious, political, or whatever other affiliations.
Yeah. Now, if only the religions and the government would get together and do the same damn thing.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I think we need to get out of here for the day, but thanks, guys. I really appreciate you doing this with us all the time. And it's just, it's fabulous. I'm loving this new format of the live streaming thing. I'm really digging it.
It's awesome.
And especially with you guys are awesome. I love that you're very knowledgeable about this kind of stuff. As I told you in the beginning, when we had Keith with us, Keith Blanchard, I couldn't think of 3 other people that I would want to do this with, and Ralph and I have been doing this with Black Lotus for a little over 2 years now. And I'm just really digging this new format. But anyway, enough of that. Thanks a lot for being here. Viewers, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time we do upload another video. And make sure to go over to our podcast and check it out. And check out DarkHour Paranormal on YouTube as well with Michael Roser. And but anyway, until next time, keep thinking and question everything.
Bye, everybody.